Hey everyone, ready to dig into something different today. We're going to tackle import-export management,
Yeah,
getting that dream job in agricultural machinery and equipment.
right. Think cutting edge tractors, not those old rusty plows, right?
Exactly. And it's global now, more than ever.
Absolutely. And we're going to make sure you ace that interview using some insider tips from RoleCatcher's career guide and prep materials.
The more I learn about this, the more I'm like, wow, it's really fascinating. It's not just about, you know, moving stuff around. It's understanding all the intricacies of international trade regulations that change all the time
Yeah.
and building relationships across different cultures. And then you add RoleCatcher's AI tools on top of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's a whole other level of strategy involved.
For sure, those AI insights are really game changers, but let's break down what an import-export manager actually does first.
Yeah,
Got to understand the job before you can ace that interview, right?
totally. The career guide uses this analogy of an orchestra conductor, which I really like. You're not playing every instrument, but you're making sure everyone's in harmony, from your own team to suppliers overseas,
Yeah.
and of course, all those regulatory bodies.
Exactly. You're responsible for that whole flow across borders,
Right.
which means you got to be deep into logistics, fluent in trade laws. Oh, and a little cultural intelligence never hurts.
It's like a little bit of everything. So speaking of challenges, let's jump into some of the common interview questions that RoleCatcher pointed out.
Okay, sounds good.
I'm thinking if we walk through these, it'll not just help our listeners prep, but also show what this role really demands.
Yeah, I agree. Let's do it.
All right, question number one, the classic. How did you get started in the import-export industry?
Mm-hmm.
Seems simple, but I'm sure there's a right way and wrong way to answer this.
Oh, absolutely. This is your chance to make a good first impression.
Okay.
Don't just list every job you've ever had. Think of that one moment that really sparked your passion for import-export.
Yeah.
Maybe it was studying abroad or a volunteer project, something where you saw the impact of moving goods across borders.
So showing you, take initiative and connecting your experience to this specific field.
Yes. And don't be afraid to make it personal.
Oh, interesting.
Did you grow up in a family business that imported stuff? Did you travel the world and become fascinated by different trading practices?
Okay.
Those little things make your story memorable.
Be yourself, but make sure it fits with the job.
Yeah.
And this is where I think RoleCatcher's AI can be super helpful.
Oh, yeah.
They help you pinpoint those key experiences and even give you suggestions for how to frame them for the best impact.
It's like having a career coach in your back pocket, right?
Exactly. All right, question two is more technical. What is your experience with agricultural machinery and equipment?
Oh, okay.
This one feels like you need more than just knowing different types of tractors.
You're right. It's about understanding the industry itself.
Okay.
Have you worked with any big brands? Do you get the challenges of exporting, say, oversized equipment, that kind of thing?
All right, so it's not just what you're shipping, but how it fits into the global market.
Yeah, exactly.
This is where I think that RoleCatcher Career Guide would be awesome.
Oh, yeah.
They get into all the current trends, the challenges, the key players.
You really do their research.
It gives you some good ammo for your answer.
It shows you're not just looking for any job, you're interested in this specific industry.
Love it. Okay, question three. How do you stay up to date with changes in import-export regulations? Feels like walking through a minefield with how often those change.
It's true, staying current is key.
Right.
A good way to answer is mentioning specific publications like a trade magazine or online resources like the World Trade Organization website.
Oh, that's smart. So you're not just saying, I keep up with industry news.
Yeah.
You're giving concrete examples.
Exactly.
Shows you're really plugged in.
You can even mention a recent article you liked or a webinar.
Right.
It shows you're not just passively reading, you're actively looking for information.
And what's great is RoleCatcher links to some of those resources right in their platform.
Even better.
Super convenient.
It's all about showing you're dedicated to learning and staying ahead of the game.
All right, question four switches gears a little. What is your experience managing a team? This is about those transferable skills, right?
Exactly. Even if you haven't led a huge team,
Okay.
highlight times you took initiative, collaborated, or mentored someone.
Right.
Import-export managers work with people across departments, across countries even, so showing leadership is really important.
So instead of just, I'm a team player, I could talk about a time I managed a project with people in different time zones even.
Exactly. Or maybe you trained new people or took charge of a complex task.
Okay.
Think about those situations.
And again, I think this is where RoleCatcher's AI can be really helpful.
How so?
It analyzes your work history and picks out those experiences that really highlight leadership, and then Give suggestions for how to frame them for your answer.
It's like having a PR team just for your skills.
Right. Okay, question 5 brings us to logistics. How do you ensure the timely delivery of goods?
Right.
Feels like a mix of planning, problem solving, and maybe a little luck.
A little bit of all of that, yeah.
Yeah.
This is your time to shine a light on your meticulous approach to supply chain management, you know? Don't just say, I track shipments. Highlight how you find those potential problems.
Okay, so I could talk about using tracking software, communicating proactively with suppliers about possible delays.
Yeah.
Even having backup plans for things like bad weather or port closures.
Now you're talking. That shows you can anticipate challenges and find solutions.
And again, RoleCatcher has a ton of resources on logistics in their platform, so you can really get that knowledge base strong.
It's all about being prepared.
Right.
Showing you're not just reacting to problems, but actively trying to prevent them.
Okay, question 6 throws a bit of a curveball our way.
Yeah.
We're having some major delays getting shipments to Brazil. How would you handle it?
Oh, yeah. They want to see you in action, not just hear what you know. This is where you show you can think on your feet and use that knowledge. They're looking for a structured approach.
Right.
What would your first steps be?
Well, I wouldn't just jump to conclusions without getting all the info first.
Okay.
So first, figure out where the holdup is. Is it customs?
No.
Documents. Something within Brazil itself.
Makes sense.
Once you know the root cause, then you can start finding solutions.
And don't forget about your network in these situations.
Right.
Who would you reach out to?
Definitely our freight forwarder in Brazil, maybe even our local contacts there to get their take on what's going on.
Yeah, good call.
It could be a new regulation we missed, or maybe even a strike at the port. Who knows?
Exactly. Those local connections are so valuable.
Hmm.
So once you've got a handle on the problem, then you can brainstorm solutions.
Right. And depending on what it is, the solution might be changing our shipping routes, working with suppliers to speed up production,
Yeah.
maybe even looking at air freight if it's super time sensitive.
Got to be adaptable, right? Find those creative solutions within the world of international trade.
Absolutely. I bet this is another area where RoleCatcher's AI would be really helpful.
It can be, yeah.
Could it actually analyze something like this and give suggestions?
It can, to a certain degree. It's not going to replace your own knowledge,
Right.
but it can look at past shipments, find patterns and delays, and even suggest things based on what works well in the industry.
Wow. So it's like having an assistant with years of experience.
Exactly, like having someone in your back pocket during the interview.
Love it. Okay, let's move on to another scenario question. We're looking to expand into a new market, let's say Vietnam. What are some key things you'd consider for an import-export strategy?
All right, so this one's about the big picture.
Right, you're basically coming up with the whole business plan on the spot.
Exactly.
Where would you even begin?
Yeah, where would you start?
Well, I'd absolutely want to understand the market in Vietnam first. Like, what's the demand for agricultural machinery there? Who are we up against? What's the economic situation? We don't want to go in blind.
That's right, research is key.
Yeah.
What about the regulations and all that?
Oh, for sure. I'd want to look into their import tariffs, quotas, any specific standards or certifications we need for our equipment.
Right.
Don't want any surprises with the regulations.
Exactly. Got to navigate all that. What else comes to mind?
Logistics, for sure. What's the transportation situation like there? Are the shipping routes reliable? How long will it take to actually get our products there?
All important factors.
Right. And this is where knowing your Incoterms is crucial.
Absolutely. Got to make sure you choose the right ones for Vietnam. It'll make things much smoother.
You're reminding me I need to brush up on those.
Always a good idea.
But it's not just the technical stuff, right? I imagine cultural factors would play a big role in our strategy, too.
Oh, absolutely. You have to be culturally aware when you're expanding into a new market like Vietnam.
Right.
Understanding their business etiquette, communication styles, even things like gift giving. It all makes a difference.
It's all about building those relationships.
Exactly, especially in a culture that values trust and long-term partnerships.
Definitely. And even learning a few basic Vietnamese phrases would probably go a long way.
It shows respect.
Yeah,
A willingness to meet them halfway.
I like that. So it's not just about the business, it's about making those connections.
For sure.
And, this is another area where RoleCatcher really shines.
How so?
They have so much info for this kind of market research. Country profiles, industry reports, even cultural guides.
It's like having a global intelligence team at your fingertips.
I know, right?
And they help you tailor it to the specific company and job you're going for.
It's amazing. It's like they thought of everything.
They really do a good job.
Okay, next question is all about handling those tough situations. Tell me about a time you had to deal with a difficult stakeholder.
Maybe a supplier who is always missing deadlines.
Or a customer unhappy with a shipment.
Exactly. That's a tough one.
It really is. It's all about diplomacy, isn't it?
Yeah. It is. The interviewer wants to see that you can handle conflict, but also keep those relationships strong.
Okay.
What's your approach?
First, I'd really try to understand what's causing the issue.
Hmm.
Is the supplier having production problems? Is it a communication breakdown?
Right.
Once I get the why, then I can start working towards a solution that works for everyone.
Being solution-oriented, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how you've dealt with something like this before?
Sure. I once had a supplier who was constantly late with deliveries,
Okay.
and it was messing up our whole production schedule.
Right. So what did you do?
Well, I reached out to them, not to complain, but to really understand what was going on.
Okay.
Turns out they were having staffing shortages because of a health crisis happening locally.
Oh, wow. So completely out of their control.
Yeah. And once we knew that, we worked together to find a solution.
Like what?
We adjusted our production schedule a little bit to work with their reduced capacity, and they made sure to prioritize our orders and even gave us a discount on future ones as a thank you.
Wow. So a win-win.
Yeah, it's all about communicating clearly, being understanding, and willing to be flexible.
Those are key skills in this field for sure.
Absolutely. And you know what? This is another area where RoleCatcher's AI can be surprisingly helpful.
Oh, yeah.
It can actually look at your work history and pick out experiences that show your conflict resolution skills.
That's pretty cool.
And then they give you suggestions for how to talk about those experiences in an interview.
Wow. It's like having a PR team for your soft skills.
Right. Okay, question 8 throws a bit of a technical term at us. What are Incoterms, and why are they important in international trade?
All right. Yeah, those can seem a little intimidating at first.
They do.
But they're really just a set of standardized terms that everyone agrees on.
Okay.
They define what the buyer and seller are responsible for in an international sale.
So instead of having to hash out every little detail about a shipment, like who handles transportation, insurance, customs,
It's all laid out.
Incoterms provide a common language that everyone understands.
Exactly. Helps avoid confusion, reduces risks, makes the whole process smoother.
It's like having a universal rule book for global trade.
That's a good way to put it. Now, when you're answering this in an interview, it's important to show that you understand the different Incoterms and what they mean in practice.
Okay.
Don't just rattle off definitions.
Right. So, for example, I might say something like Incoterms, like FOB and CIF, determine who's responsible for the goods at each stage of the journey,
Okay.
who pays for shipping, insurance, customs, and where the risk transfers from the seller to the buyer.
Excellent. And to really impress them, give a specific example of how different Incoterms would apply to, say, exporting agricultural machinery.
Okay, I like that.
Oh.
So let's say we're sending a tractor to Brazil using CIF.
All right.
That means we're responsible for the costs of getting that tractor to the port in, say, Rio de Janeiro.
Okay.
But once it's on the ship, that responsibility and the risk shifts over to the buyer.
Perfect example. It shows you understand how it works in the real world, not just in theory.
Right. And I'm sure RoleCatcher has a ton of info on Incoterms, right?
Oh, absolutely. They break down each term, give examples, case studies, the whole 9 yards.
It's like the ultimate cheat sheet for international trade.
Pretty much. It's a must-have resource for sure.
Okay, question 9. How do you stay informed about changes in global trade policies and regulations? That feels like a full-time job in itself.
It can feel that way. The landscape is always changing. You got to be proactive.
Right.
What are some ways you stay in the loop?
Well, I always subscribe to industry newsletters, like from the World Trade Organization or the International Chamber of Commerce.
Good idea. Those are great sources.
They help me stay on top of major developments.
What else?
Attending conferences and webinars is another great way to learn about new trends, do some networking, and hear from the experts.
It's like a crash course in all things import-export.
Exactly. And then there are professional organizations.
Oh, yeah, those are valuable.
Joining groups like the National Customs Brokers and Forwarders Association or the International Federation of Freight Forwarders Associations.
It's a mouthful, but so important.
Gives you access to resources, training, and a whole network of people who really get it.
Your own built-in support system.
Exactly. Oh, and I'd be remiss not to mention LinkedIn.
Of course. Can't forget about LinkedIn.
Not just for networking, but for staying up to date on industry news and trends.
It's like a virtual water cooler for international trade.
I like that.
Hey.
Okay, on to our last question to this deep dive. Do you have any questions for me?
Okay, here's your chance to see if they're a good fit for you.
Right, turn the tables a little bit.
Exactly. But avoid those generic questions. It makes you look unprepared.
Wait, like, what's the salary? Or how much vacation time do I get?
Exactly. Save those for later.
So what kind of questions should we be asking?
Ask questions that show you've done your homework on the company, the industry. Show you're really thinking about the role.
So, for example, I could ask, what are some of the biggest challenges facing your import-export department right now?
Good one.
Or maybe, what are the company's growth plans for its international operations over the next 5 years?
Those are great. You could also ask about the company culture, their sustainability efforts, things like that.
It shows you're not just looking for any job, you're looking for the right fit.
Exactly. A place where you can grow.
And don't be afraid to take some notes during the interview, right? Shows you're listening and engaged.
Absolutely. It shows you're paying attention. Even just going through those questions, it really highlights how this role is about so much more than just knowing the technical stuff. It's strategy, problem solving, even a little bit of like cultural awareness.
Right, like you said before, you're the conductor of this international orchestra.
Exactly.
Making sure everyone's on the same page, whether they're in the next office or across the world.
Exactly. So don't forget about those soft skills when you're prepping. Think about how you communicate, how you build relationships, how you handle those unexpected problems that always pop up in international trade.
It's inevitable something will come up.
Oh, absolutely.
And, this is where I'm really impressed with RoleCatcher's AI, because it can actually analyze your experience and pinpoint those soft skills.
Wow, that's pretty advanced.
And then give you tips on how to highlight them in your resume, your cover letter, even your interview answers.
You're like having your own personal branding team.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about what to do, but what about some common mistakes people make in these interviews?
Oh, good point. Yeah.
What comes to mind?
One big one is not showing enough enthusiasm. I mean, this isn't just about logistics. It's about connecting the world.
I love that, connecting the world.
It's exciting stuff.
So even if you're nervous, let that passion show.
Exactly. A genuine smile, good eye contact, it goes a long way.
What else?
Another mistake is thinking you can just wing it because you have experience. This isn't just a casual chat.
Right. This is your time to shine.
Exactly. Do your research, understand the company, their products, their markets, even their company culture if you can.
Show them you're really interested and that you've done your homework.
And be ready with those insightful questions at the end.
Yeah, that's your chance to interview them a little.
Exactly.
So before we wrap up, I'm curious, what trends are you most excited about in the import-export world these days? What does the future look like?
Oh, that's a great question. One thing I'm really interested in is how e-commerce is changing the game for agricultural machinery and equipment.
Oh, interesting. So even those big tractors are going online.
Absolutely. This industry is all about relationships, but digital platforms are opening up so many new possibilities.
That's huge. So how does that impact the role of the import-export manager?
Well, they need to be tech savvy now, right?
Makes sense.
Understanding e-commerce, international digital marketing, even cybersecurity in the supply chain.
Wow. So it's not just about knowing the physical goods. It's about the whole digital ecosystem.
Exactly. And that takes adaptability, a willingness to keep learning, to stay ahead of the curve.
It sounds like a really exciting time to be in this field.
It really is. The future of import-export is bright, but you have to be ready to innovate.
I love that. That's a great note to end on. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive into the world of import-export management.
My pleasure. Anytime.
And for our listeners, remember, with the right preparation and a good dose of passion, you can achieve those global career goals.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, RoleCatcher is there to help you every step of the way.
For sure.
Until next time, happy exporting.